For 30 years, Martin Keller lived in the same red brick house on the corner of Maple and 3rd Street. It was a modest, quiet home, except for one thing. It sat directly across from St. Andrew's Church, and every day, like clockwork, the bell rang. It wasn't a particularly large bell, nor was it especially loud compared to city noise. But to Martin, it was unbearable. He hated that bell. It rang at 7 in the morning, jarring him from sleep. It rang again at noon, interrupting his solitude. It rang at 6 in the evening, right when he tried to find peace with a cup of tea and the static noise of his old television. He used to yell at it, slam windows shut. Once, he even called the town to complain. "These bells are a nuisance," he told the clerk. "They've been ringing for over 100 years, sir," she replied. "They remind us God is near," Martin scoffed. "If he's near, he can knock on my door and explain himself." But no one ever knocked. Martin wasn't always bitter. Once, long ago, he was a boy who loved Sundays. He remembered church pews and the scent of old wood and wax. He remembered his mother's hand gently guiding him through hymns, and his father, tall, warm, steady, who whispered prayers before bedtime. But when Martin was just 10, his father collapsed on the front porch. A heart attack. Sudden, final, and nothing was ever the same. His mother remarried a year later. The man she chose was different, harsh, silent in affection, loud in disappointment. Church stopped being sacred. It became obligation. Then, avoidance. By high school, Martin had decided faith was just a fairy tale people told themselves when life became too real. He dropped out, worked odd jobs, drank, drifted. The years blended. He became a night janitor at the local school, lived alone, had a cat named Leo who gave him just enough company to avoid the sound of his own loneliness. He had no family, no real friends, and the only thing that remained consistent, besides Leo, was that bell. It rang. Every day, every season. Whether he was sad, angry, numb, or empty, it rang. He sometimes wondered why no one else seemed to mind it. Neighbors smiled as they walked past the church. Children laughed as the chimes echoed through the streets. Some even paused to listen. But to Martin, it was like being taunted by a ghost. It reminded him of everything he lost, of everything he stopped believing in, especially God. Because if there was a God, he'd explain why Martin felt invisible. Why? His life was a cycle of loss, silence, and missed chances. Why he had lived 62 years and not once felt seen. Until that night. It was late. March. The rain hadn't stopped all day. The sky was gray and sullen. Martin had just been laid off. Budget cuts. They offered no warning. Just a letter in a box. For his things, when he got home, the power was out. The fridge hummed inconsistently. The heater was dead. His mailbox carried a letter from the bank. Final warning. He owed 3 months' mortgage. Leo didn't greet him that day. He lay curled in the hallway, sick, barely moving. Martin hadn't had enough money for vet bills in months. He hadn't even bought groceries in days. The apartment smelled like damp paper and cold coffee. He sat in the dark kitchen, staring at the empty counter. And then, he did something he hadn't done in years. He wrote a note. "There's nothing left. I'm tired. I'm done." He folded it neatly, placed it on the table, and reached for the bottle of sleeping pills he'd kept since his mother died 5 years ago. He hadn't planned to use them. Until now. Just as he unscrewed the cap, the church bell rang. It wasn't time. It was 6:43 p.m. But the bell rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Martin froze. He turned toward the window. Rain streaked down the glass like tears. The bell rang again. Louder, slower. Like a deliberate heartbeat. He stood. It rang a 5th time, then a 6th. Then he heard something else. His name. Martin. He spun around. No one was there, he thought. It was a trick of the mind, a memory, a shadow. But then he heard it again, this time inside him. "Martin, I see you." He dropped the pill bottle. It rolled across the floor. Leo stirred in the hallway. Martin fell to his knees. He hadn't cried in 20 years, not at his mother's funeral. Not when he lost his job. Not when he realized he had no one to call Dot, but now he wept for what he had lost. For what he had become. And for the voice that had broken through 30 years of silence. The bell stopped ringing, but something inside him kept vibrating. A warmth he hadn't felt in decades. Like fire waking frozen limbs. He didn't sleep that night. Dot instead. He sat by the window, watching the church tower, wondering, hoping. Dot the next morning. At sunrise, Martin walked across the street. He hadn't stepped foot in the church since he was 12. The doors were open. The sanctuary empty. He stood in the doorway for a long time. Then, a man approached. The pastor. Younger than Martin, but kind eyes. I just need to sit," Martin said. "Of course," the man replied. Martin sat on the last pew, hands clasped. No words, just silence. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt holy. He came back the next day. And the next. Weeks passed. He didn't speak much, but he listened. He watched. He started feeding Leo better. Cleaned his house. Fixed the broken light on the porch. One Sunday morning, the pastor invited him to help ring the bell. He hesitated. Then nodded. The rope felt heavier than he expected. But he pulled, once, twice, and the sound rang out across Maple Street, clear, beautiful. People stopped to listen, and Martin wept again. This time, not from despair, but from gratitude, because the bell hadn't just marked time anymore. It had marked rescue. That night, he wrote a new note, taped it to the church door. To anyone who thinks God doesn't speak, he does. Sometimes in thunder, sometimes in silence. But once in my life, he spoke through a bell, and he saved me. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who feels forgotten. Let them know they are not invisible, that God still speaks and still saves. Subscribe to Faith Light Stories for more true testimonies of grace, hope, and redemption. And tell us, has God ever spoken to you in an unexpected way? Leave a comment. Your story may be the bell someone else needs.